Ho, 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 and a happy holidays to all my fellow .NET developers. My name's Aaron. I'm a developer advocate, and today I want to show you developing again .NET on the Mac in 2024/2025. One of the coolest things that's come out this year is that Rider is now free for open source projects. Rider, if you don't know, is probably one of the best .NET IDEs out there if you want just something that works. You know, don't get me wrong, Visual Studio Code is kind of cool, and so is Cursor, and those are great, but they don't come with like templates for C# and stuff. So if you're a Maui developer and you're looking for some like hand-holding, or just a better experience, Rider is very cool. And on the Mac, it's pretty much the only game in town since Microsoft closed the door. We poured one out for Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio for Mac last year because Microsoft end-of-lifed it. So pretty much on the Mac, you're stuck with one of 3D IDEs. Either you can go with Visual Studio Code, you can go with Cursor, which is just Visual Studio Code, but it looks better, in my opinion, or you can go with Rider. Now, I happen to have Rider installed on my computers right here, but what this video really I want to talk about is the Uno platform. Uno, now let me step back for a second. I don't work for Uno, I don't work for JetBrains. I'm a developer, I work for actually a company named Ditto, but the point is, they're cool things. And as a developer advocate, I want to show you cool things, cool ways you can build apps. And Uno is one of those. Now, recently, Uno has went through and created an extension for Rider. Now, how do you get one of those? So one, you got to download Rider, right? So I've got it running here on my computer. And then under configure, you can go into here and you're gonna look for your extensions, okay? Your plugins. And when you go into plugins, you just want to search for Uno platform and get that installed. Now you can see here, I already have it installed. Once you have it installed, let me tell you folks, this is pretty awesome. I'm gonna go to new solution, for example, here, and you can see Uno platform now shows up in my project type list. And this is something that is just amazing to start out with, right? So here you can see I can name my app. So for example, I'm gonna name my solution, example, Uno 1, maybe for example, right? I'm gonna throw it in this folder because that's pretty cool. You can see here, I can say presets. So I can go with recommended, which they're recommending LTS.NET 8, or I can go with .NET 9 that just shipped. Now, I'm not gonna do Windows on this computer. I'm gonna show you how to fix Windows though on another sample project in a few minutes here. But for sake of argument, this will require a little bit more work. You can pick Windows, but if you pick Windows, you're gonna have to know on the Mac, you're gonna have to go through and edit some config files just to get it to, your Mac stuff to compile, because it's gonna try to compile Windows at the same time, which is not great. So I'm gonna just uncheck Windows for right now. I'm gonna use MVVM, I'm gonna use XAML. You can see here, you get both Material, which is the design system that makes it look like kind of like Flutter or like Android, or you can use Fluent, which is Microsoft's design language. You can see here for authentication, they're coming in with pre-built stuff. This is what I was talking about. Visual Studio Code, a lot of times you're left out in the cold, you have to kind of build all this stuff yourself, but with this cool template, you can go through, it makes it really easy to go through and select stuff. I can select, maybe I want a custom, I'm gonna go with none for right now. You can see here, here's my application ID. So this will go through and automatically get put into your info P list, also in your Android config for your mobile apps. If I want tests, I can do tests. You can see here for CI/CD pipeline, they can, if you go through and select GitHub Actions, they're gonna go through and generate the files for your GitHub action. How cool is that? Under extensions, you can see here, we got dependency injection, configuration, you know, your HTTP client's gonna automatically set that up for you in a way that's gonna be really nice. You can see here for localization, and you can just hover over any of these if you don't know what they do, and they'll give you a little tooltip that comes up to tell you what's going on here. For navigation, we could just use regions, for example, and then logging, how cool is this? They give you serial log, console, or just say, hey, I just want the default logger, man, and it'll just write to the console then. So that's cool. You can see here for features, we can go through and select the .NET toolkit, or this is Uno's toolkit. You can see here for Maui embedding, you can embed Maui control, so you can use both those, right? And then you have some media elements here for video, and if you need those. And then this is just the template description. You can technically speaking download the template and run it from the command line, the .NET command line, but this is just a UI that makes it a little bit easier. So I'm gonna go through and create this app. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and create it because I want to show you off a couple cool things that I think are game changing. Uno's done some very cool things. So I've got my example app open here. We'll take a look here and just kind of review like how their apps get set up. Very similar to Maui. If you like Maui, you're at home. You have your app XAML file. This will be your main file that you're gonna go through, add your theming, all your kind of stuff. This is your entry point for your app, right? You can see here, it's a little bit more complicated than the Maui app because they run on so many different platforms. So you can see here, they're giving you kind of stuff that you care about. Here's your localization, your serialization. Here, they're going through and creating a service for this weather forecast. You can see here, they're adding the context into that. They're using the HTTP client here. So you can see here that we're getting that automatically set up. You can see here, this is where you'd register for that at. They have a weather cache, it looks like here. You can see here, they have a singleton that you can go through here. They're telling you this is where you want to register your custom services, right? And you don't have to use Singleton. There's other options because this is just the standard .NET DI package, right? So, you know, Terry, all those other options you could do. You can see here that we set our main window. And then if you're using the studio, which I'll show in a few seconds, some of the cool stuff there. And then they have a very similar thing to Maui's shell that they're giving you here. You can see here's the shell view model and the view. And you can see here they're doing their routing here. So this is giving you the ability to route your different views. And so this is kind of stock stuff if you think about it, right? So they automatically break down the code in the example here for you. So for example, our services are in here. You can see here, here's our services. We can see our presentation layer is going to be our views, right? So we have a first view, our main view, and then our view models are kind of all together. If you wanted to, you could separate out the view models from the views, right? Put that into a separate folder if you need to. But main page you'll see here is just some XAML. You'll see here, you just enter your name and then you go to a second page. And then they have a second page that basically is just a small amount of code that lets you go back. Very, very simple. Let's go ahead and run this. So I'm going to select, to start out with iOS, because that's one of the first things people are going to probably want to do. Now, when you first build, or you know, if you run debug or build, it's going to come up and say, hey, you know, a lot of times in iOS, it's going to ask you for your cert, right? You know, it doesn't know how to build it without having a signing. And so, you know, that's a message that's going to come up. You can just kind of ignore that if you're running on a simulator. But if you're running on a real device, you will need to go in and set up your info P list to say, you know, what certificate and stuff. And you can go into your project and do that. No different than Maui, for example. So, I mean, it's not terribly difficult to do. I'm going to go ahead and pause this until the build is done. Oh, we'll see what's going on here. So see, iPhone 14, I don't have iPhone 14 installed, and that's what the template's coming with. So that's why it failed. I'm going to select iPhone 16 Pro Max, and now this will work. That just means I need to update their template because their template's based on an older phone that no longer ships with the newer version of Xcode. I should probably message them on that. And look at it like that, folks. Our app is now up and running. You can see here, you can enter your name. You can go to second page if you want. There's a little navigation thing. You can move this little guy here around. So if you need to, like, if you're navigating, you need to be able to hit the back button, you can do that there, right? So this is a you know, complete option here to move this little thing around. And that's iOS running very quickly here. You know, that's pretty neat. We got hot reload running here. So hot reload, you can see here we're connected. And that means if I change my code in my XAML, it should automatically update over here, which is pretty cool, right? But that's not the coolest thing. That's not the thing that I think Uno's doing that is game changing. Instead, I'm going to go to desktop here. And it's very specific that this feature is in beta and you have to sign up for it. I'm going to show you it first, and then I'm going to tell you how you can get it. This is game changing. Okay. So I'm going to select desktop. I'm going to tell it to go ahead and do a debug build. I'm going to wait because it's going to take that. So I'm going to fast forward past the build process. Okay. You can see here, our app is up and running after our build. You can see here, we have a new icon. So what does this icon do, this fire icon? This is probably one of the coolest things I've seen in a very long time and really innovative. This reminds me of the old days of like where XAML is just knocking it out of the park with like innovative stuff. And I'm going to click the little fire icon and you'll see here what's going to happen is a designer comes up. What? A designer comes up regardless if you're on Windows or Mac, and you could use it to build your application. This is like super crazy awesome. So say for example, I have this name box. Maybe I wanted to make this a login form, right? So I'm going to go through here and search for my password box. I could just go into here, my stack panel, add it here to my password box. And now I have a password box and a text box. I got them in the wrong order. I can just drag them over here. Now they're in the right order. And here I can say, instead of enter your name, you know, which is in here, right? I can just change this to be, and you can see here, these are all the properties that you can see inside of this control. So you can scroll through this big long list of all the properties that are available to it. You can set all those without writing a single line of code. And when you go through and edit it in here, it automatically updates your XAML code. What? Yes. So I'm going to add this text box in, or this password box in. This would automatically update my XAML code. So once I'm done here, you can see here, I can even hit play to kind of see what it would look like. You can see here that this is the designer. You can go backwards by this. You can go through and see your different screen sizes. So for example, I'm on just make it biggie, but if I wanted to, I could go to like phone, and there it is on a phone now. And you can see here, this is gonna be just like, hey, automatically scale to whatever you need to. But I really like the idea that, hey, you know, even though I'm in desktop mode over here, I can go look and see what it would look like in phone mode. How cool is that? And you can see here, I can zoom in and zoom out. So if I'm hard of seeing those kind of things, you can make your zoom level whatever you need to be in order to feel comfortable in the designer. And of course, you can also check light mode and dark mode. Oh man, I'm telling you folks, this is crazy bonkers cool. And this is what it would look like running then, right? So this is the super cool thing that I think is game changing inside of Uno, is the ability to have this designer built into it. How cool, man. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out this, right? So I'm gonna go through and do that. And what should have happened, if I go back to my main page, let me go ahead and close this out and find my main page. Ammo here. I should have got my password box, and there it is. There's my password box code. You can see here, it was added to my main XAML now. And now I have both the password box and the text box, and I'm all set up and running. And so it automatically updated my code. I'm gonna go ahead and hit close here on this. So it stops running. Automatically updated my code, which gives you this super awesome designer. Now this is in beta. You have to go to the Uno website to sign up for it. Okay, you can go to Uno platform. It's right here. So you can see here, they have their design the code here. And so you can kind of click on here and from the website, learn about that. Go ahead and sign up for the beta. It's a closed beta, so you'll have to go through and wait to get access to it. But if you go to their website, you can go through and check that out. The other thing I wanted to show out is just how cool Uno really is if you want to learn it. So it's based on XAML. It's very similar to Microsoft XAML. It's actually WinUI XAML, if I remember right. And what you can do is you can go to github.com/Uno platform/Uno samples. Okay. And in here, just download this whole repo because it's got a bunch of different sample apps and they are all pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out this example app that I showed you, where I showed you the hot designer and stuff, you know, the hot reload and then the designer. What I want to do is show you this calculator app, and I want to show you two different ways because it's pretty neat how it works. So one, here's a simple calculator app, and it tells you right here that this repo is in XAML MVVM model view model, right? You can see here I can go through and select my different platforms. I'm going to select Android, for example, and I can just go ahead and build this and run this on an Android emulator. And I already kind of have it running here, but we'll go ahead and close it out so we can run it again. Let me go ahead and just stop that there so we can get it running. So you can just, I want to show no smoke and mirrors. So we'll fast forward here while it builds, and then we'll show it running. There's our simple calculator running in Android. Now I can go over to iOS. I'm going to get my simulator over here, and I'm going to do my simple calculator over here of iOS. And you'll see here, they look almost the same. This is pretty cool. And because of dark mode and light mode support, they have theming support. You can see here, you could easily test between dark and light mode, and it's pretty easy. The thing is fully functional. So for example, I could say this, and I could say minus 321, and you'll see here, I get my answer. And so a very, very simple calculator, but it's showing off the fact that you have cross-platform UI, and it looks really pretty attractive between the two platforms, between iOS and Android. Now on top of that, because Uno runs on so many different platforms, you're going to get out of that same code. You could do a desktop version of the app here. So right here is this desktop. And we showed this earlier. This is where the hot designer or the hot reload and then the new designer tool came in, right? So this is off the desktop version. Now, what is the difference between the desktop version and, say, for example, Mac Catalyst? Well, once again, the desktop version is going to run its own rendering engine using Skia, I want to say. And so very similar to how Flutter used to work. Flutter no longer uses Skia. It actually uses Metal. But in prior versions of Flutter, it used to use Skia for it, and this uses Skia Sharp for its rendering engine. Kind of like Avolion a little bit. But if I close this out, If I don't want to give that out, it also supports Mac Catalyst, which means I can select here the Apple with the big screen, and that means this is Mac Catalyst. This would be a native then iOS app that's running a Mac Catalyst that gives you a Mac app then. And you can see here, it renders a little different. You can see here, I get the same kind of options for making my window bigger and smaller, but this is now a native from the standpoint of code. This is going to generate a native application. It's rendering using the native components, the UI components, right? And you can see here my calculator is working the same way. I've got dark mode and light mode. So really kind of flexible options. If you want Catalyst support, you got it. If you want to use their rendering engine, you got it. iOS and Android and Windows. Now, I was telling you earlier, I had some problems running this on the Mac, grabbing their sample apps, and I wanted to kind of show you what's involved in making this work. I'm going to open up a different version of this because I want to show off one more cool feature. So one, they have an example of how to do this in C# with no XAML whatsoever. And so that's the thing that I think is really kind of cool. And don't get me wrong, I know Microsoft has a community project for this, but Uno's supporting this out of the box, man. You know, this isn't like a community. This is thing like, hey, if you get Uno, you have support for this. And if you take a look at this, this looks, and of course, it's going to be all red right now because the packages haven't restored yet. And this is Windows. I'm going to switch it over from Windows to be iOS, for example, and then this should work because it should know about iOS versus Windows. You'll see here, this is all C#. This looks a lot like Jetpack Compose, or it looks a lot like Swift UI. Or if you're a Flutter person, this looks very similar to Flutter, or even React when it comes down to it. This is more of a fluent new way of doing this. This is very reactive. You can see here, I make my parent component. Right here, I have my data context, and then I'm adding to this, right, a bunch of call method calls. And I add a background, and then my content then is a border, and then here's all the children. And you can see here I'm making a grid, and inside the grid, I'm adding children of a header, my output, and my keypad. And that makes sense. If you go look at that calculator, we had the header at the top, and that showed us our light mode and dark mode. We had our output, which was just kind of like a printout screen, and then we have our keypad. Now we're making our data context here, our main view model. We're getting a theme service inside of that, so we know our view model is going to do that. But since we're passing in our view model, and you can see here where this is going to be a closure, we're passing it in as VM as a variable here, we can access it and pass it to our children. So each one of our components now here is going to have that view model passed down to it. This is really easy to read code in C#. There's no longer going between XAML files, which is this XML kind of HTML, and then going to your C# behind file. All of it's here in one spot. For some people, this looks extremely attractive, like me. I'm used to using Jetpack Compose, React, Swift UI, all these other frameworks because I'm a developer advocate, and I have to know all these other platforms. For me, this just makes it way easier. You can see here the grid component works very similar to the Maui grid component. So you can see here we have our stars of saying how many grids we want to, this is going to be columns, right? It's going to say we have 4 columns, and it's going to say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and they're going to be various in size because of the star here. But we can see how it's even making our keypad here. And this is very basic code, very easy to read. This is really kind of nice. Now, out of the box, if you try to run this, it won't work. What? It won't work because of Windows. Once again, the platform tries to go through and make Windows work. So how do you fix this? Well, you're gonna go into your project. I'm gonna right click on Simple Calculator. I'm gonna go into the edit, and I wanna edit my CS project file. In .NET, CS project is the way that we run everything. And all you have to do to make this run and compile is take Windows here and cut it out and comment it out on Mac. And if I comment it out here, kind of bring it over here. Now, of course, what I want to do is probably make 2 of these files, make one for Windows and then one for Mac, and then open the one for Mac that doesn't have Windows in it on Mac, and then make a separate CS project file for Windows and have Windows on there. So and then have it not open Mac Catalyst on Windows because that's not going to work on Windows. You can't compile it, right? But if I were to save this now, and I were to go through and run this, like on, for example, my Mac Catalyst here, this should not run without problems because of the fact I took the Windows platform out. You see here my app is now compiled, and there's my calculator up and running. And it's the same calculator, it's the same, even though it's different UI code. Obviously, you can see here we get the same UI, same functionality. I can go through here minus, and we're getting the same thing. So that's really kind of cool. You have your option of XAML or C# for your UI. So as a .NET developer, I want to kind of remind you, we have one of the best ecosystems out there. if you think about it, we have Uno, which I highly recommend. If you have a project that you're starting up, you should probably do a bake-off and see which technology works, because Maui's cool and stuff, but man, Uno's doing some really innovative stuff. That designer's pretty neat, the hot reload's really neat, the way that they give you all these different platforms are supporting, like Linux, and it's supported all the box. It really reminds me of the old days of Xamarin, where they're literally innovating all the time. Now, on top of Uno, we have Avalonia here, and this is also, they run their own rendering engine. Now, if you are doing UWP, this is the place to go, because you can just take your UWP code, bring it in here, and it's going to work, and it will work on Linux, it'll work on Mac and stuff. They have it where it's pretty neat. If you haven't checked out these guys, also, they're pretty neat. GitHub uses them for the GitHub desktop client, is my understanding. It's really, really cool. Of course, Maui is by Microsoft. It's a cool platform. It's basically the next generation of Xamarin. I think it's okay. It's had some growing pains recently, but it's getting better. They're now, there's a couple different UI components out there that are now free for it, making it a little bit easier. I still think there's some jank in Maui when it comes to on Mac specifically. I've had a lot of not great experiences, especially with Android on it when it first shipped. And .NET 8 and then .NET 9 made things a little bit smoother, but also had a lot of problems with workloads and trying to keep those up and running. Now, of course, finally, the hidden gem outside of Uno is Blazor. Blazor is pretty cool. Now, what happens with .NET MAUI Blazor is you're going to basically build your UI in Razor C#, and it's using web technology, but in the side of this, it's going to run in a web view in your app using MAUI. So think of it like, here's Maui, you're gonna have a web view, and then your Blazor app runs inside of it. Very similar to Cordova or, Ionic. And people say, well, wait a minute, Aaron, this isn't cool. Web views are slow. Yeah, I mean, they're getting pretty good. The phone hardware is getting so good that you can argue that web views are fast enough for basic apps. And so this may be an option for you. You may want to think about also looking at Blazor Hybrid. If you're going to, do this bake-off and take a look. And quite honestly, the only time I've really seen performance problems in web views in 2024 is on really crappy, I have one right here, Samsung cheap phones, like they're burner phones, we call them, like the $80 phones. This is the J or A series. These phones are really slow. They usually have really slow disk on them. They are not the world's fastest phones, and because of that, they tend to be a little bit slower. So if you have some really you're building an enterprise app, but you're gonna have people running on really cheap phones from China that have really low hardware specs, then maybe Blazor is not the place for you, right? Because that web view is gonna add on, and it's just gonna have a lot of rendering problems possibly. But .NET, very, very cool for app developers. So in summary, I want to hope that you and your family have a happy holidays, regardless what kind of holiday you're celebrating. Go through, check out on the Mac. I feel .NET is really, really good in the sense that if you get Rider or even Cursor, it's going to be a great experience. Go check out Uno platform, check out Avalonian, Maui, and Blazor, and do yourself a favor. The next time you're building an app, do a bake-off, because don't take the default out of the box. There's a lot of innovation going on in .NET, and you may actually build better experiences using other platforms. Keep your mind open, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next year. Happy holidays. Take care.